Dr. Evan Chait, Kinetic Rehab and Spine. Welcome to our channel. Click the link below to subscribe, share, and like our videos. Join today, join the movement, gain access to insiders' education on how you become a better you. Welcome to your destination of health and wellness. All the best. Sempre Avante. Always forward. Dr. Bob Doane, such a pleasure to see you again.
Actually, I'm not a doctor. My official title is East Asian Medical Practitioner in the state of Washington. That's a mouthful.
It is.
Bob.
Bob, you know, I've had the opportunity to intern with you about 4 or 5 years ago. I've traveled to Germany to study your pulse system, right? I studied to Germany. I went to Germany to study your style of acupuncture. You are so unique, and especially when I was out there interning with you, not only how you communicated with patients, but the patients you saw, it made me look at Chinese medicine from a different lens and a different perspective. And I wanted to introduce my audience to you because not only are you a breath of fresh air, but the power of Chinese medicine, I didn't know how strong it was and how powerful it was until I met you. So thank you so much for being part of this call today. Can you briefly just explain to me about your clinic a little bit? And because I know that you have the busiest acupuncture clinic in the States right now. And tell me your approach and how that's so unique and different in our community.
Well, I started this medicine late. I didn't go to Chinese medical school till my late 40s, I think 48 years old. And I'd had a successful career. Initially, as a monk, I was a monk. I lived a monastic life for 10 years as a celibate monk, mostly in Europe and in the Alps.
Oh, wow.
And then I ran a TV station in Los Angeles. I was the president of KSCI Channel 18. And then after I left the TV business, I started an oil brokerage business in Houston, Texas, called Falcon. And that was very lucrative. And so on my 40th birthday, I retired. And then I had a big yacht. I went sailing for a few years. I had a crew. And for some reason, I started Chinese herbal medicine. And because as a monk, monks are very concerned about if you're meditating 18 hours a day, anything that will improve the meditation, then you're interested in, especially if it's natural. So I became interested in Western herbology as a monk. Mm. And in the mid-'80s, when I was in the oil business, the health food stores began to be shelved with Chinese herbs. And so I would ask the owner of the health food store, what's that stuff? And they said, oh, that's Chinese herbs. So I thought, Chinese herbs. So then I started swallowing Chinese herbs. Of course, I had no idea what I was swallowing, but I could feel the effect, very strong. And I had lived in India as a monk for a little over a year. Mm. And I had studied Ayurvedic medicine in India under the tutelage of a doctor called Triguna, who was quite famous at the time. So I was familiar with herbology, the use of herbs, and of course pulse diagnosis, because Ayurveda is dominated by pulse diagnosis. And so on my boat, I started studying Chinese medicine to try to figure out what herbs I should swallow. And I was giving herbs out to my crew, and it didn't go too well. Herbs, of course. And so then I just thought, well, it'd be nice to know how to use this stuff. And I had taught meditation. I taught 1,000 people meditation in India, 1973 to 74. And then I taught 1,000 people in the United States in 1970, 71. So I was already in the helping people business. And I took a detour into the oil business to amass enough wealth that I could then help people without having to worry about financial enumeration. But the problem is that to help people, you really need some kind of medical background. And I didn't want to go to Western medical school because I knew it would just be basically paint by numbers on how to give out drugs. And so Chinese medical school gave me an opportunity to sort of enrich my understanding of herbs and acquire a medical degree so that I have some sort of credentials to help people medically. And then I did. I went to the Santa Barbara School of Chinese Medicine in 1993 and graduated in 96. And I saw going through that school that there's problems in this industry because the people teaching the classes were not really successful. I could see clearly they're not successful. And I had enough background in business to be able to see clearly what's a successful business and what isn't. And but I love the medicine. And so I was always wondering, well, if I'm going to do this, am I going to starve doing it? Am I just doing it for fun or the wonder of doing it? Or is this a viable profession? Now, I was well aware in China, it's a viable profession, but I could see clearly it was not here. And I had the desire to try to help a lot of people. I certainly wanted to master the medicine, but I didn't see any reason why I shouldn't have a successful practice doing it. And so I'd already made up my mind by the time I graduated that to master the medicine, and starting at my advanced age, I was 50 years old at that time, or 51, I knew I had to have a large volume practice because I could see clearly the books are enigmatic at the best. Very difficult to learn how to do this clinically from the books. The books are too simplistic. The human body is far more complicated. And I saw clearly the mentors that I had in school, they weren't really that good at it. And so I realized I'm going to have to learn by doing. And if I'm going to, am I going to learn more seeing 5 people a day or seeing 100 people a day? I chose the 100. So I immediately set up the business in such a way that I could see a lot of people. And I immediately ran into trouble because
I did that very well.
I could see 20 a day, I could see 25, and I could push it to 30, but no more people were coming than that. I couldn't figure out how to make this thing grow. And then I did some analysis of the business, and I realized, I'm getting new patients every week, but I'm only maintaining maybe 10 visits. And so I'm only getting a 10-visit shot to try to turn these people's health around.
Which is a big challenge in the profession.
Big challenge.
Big challenge.
And
how'd you overcome that?
Pardon?
How'd you overcome that? Because that's with most acupuncturists, we have 4 acupuncturists now. The biggest challenge that I see with them is getting out of their own way and explaining that, listen, Chinese medicine is a process. It's not like taking a pill and you're cured. You have to start, and it takes time for you to build health inside of you. How do you transition that, and how do you educate the patient and educate acupuncturists? Because there's going to be a lot of acupuncturists watching this, right? And if you are an acupuncturist watching this, Bob Doane is the epitome of our profession. Like he does. Last time I was there, it was like 600 patients a week, right, or something like that. And I went to events with him, and I studied with him. I was side by side with him, felt the pulse with him. And you still have your internship program, don't you?
Yes, I do.
So it's a man that you need to look into. But for them, how do you find the process or create that process to make it, you know what? You're the patient at heart, but you also have to be viable as a business.
Yeah, you can't help many people if you can't keep your doors open. And so there wasn't any example to copy. There wasn't any really highly successful clinic. There was one in Wisconsin that I went to visit, Jennifer Blanick. She was kind enough to let me come into her clinic, and she had such a great personality, basically. And she, people just loved her. And so, she saw, I think, 30 a day. So I set up this clinic in Paulsville, Washington, and I managed to build it up to about 30 a day over about a 2.5-year period. But I saw clearly it will not grow beyond that. That's the most I can do. And I'm only maintaining the patient maybe 10 visits. And I can see clearly it's going to take a year or so to turn these people's health completely around. To take an obese diabetic patient with high blood pressure, fatty livers, fatigue, anxiety, insomnia, some depression thrown in, that takes time to turn that person around. Chinese medicine is fully capable of doing it, but you need time. you're going to have to be able to see the patient for a good year or 2 years.
How many visits, I'm sorry to interrupt you, how many visits on a new patient, a case like that they're coming in with type 2 diabetes, they're overweight, they have chronic pain in multiple joints, they have anxiety, stress, and sleep disorders. If I was a patient that had all that, and you check the pulses, and with your pulse system, which I want to get into later, which is extremely incredible, what would be the starting place for them? Like, how many visits total do you think a case like that would need in order to be turned around in Chinese medicine?
We tell the patient straight up in these cases that it's going to take a good year. But we don't lay out a year plan, we lay out a 5-month plan. And the 5-month plan is composed of Chinese herbs, Chinese herbal consultations, acupuncture, usually a nutritional counseling, weight loss, and all that's put into a plan for the patient. And generally the number of visits is usually about 12 herbal consultations over 5 months. I'll see them once a week for about a month, then it goes to every other week for 4 months. So about 12 herbal consultations. We usually give out about $2,000 worth of herbs over the 5 months. And then many of them need acupuncture. We'll usually lay out 10 visits for the patient, but we will give, if we want to see the patient 3 times a week for a month and then twice a week for a month and so forth, currently we're only charging them for 10 visits, and any visit beyond the 10 is free for 5 months. So they get unlimited acupuncture for 5 months. They're only charged for 10 visits.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've been doing that. And then they get their herbs and they get their herbal consultations, and we lay the entire plan out to the patient in the very beginning. This is your plan, and the purpose of this plan is to reduce the symptomology about 70% or more.
Within that 5 months or 6 months.
And we're very confident with that. In fact, we tell them, if you don't feel at least 50% better in 90 days, then Bob gets fired, basically. We're not going to get it. And we've done so many thousands of treatments that we have a pretty good idea of what the efficacy is for almost any given problem. So we'll tell the patient that our chances of failure with you are about 10%, with you is 20, with you is 30. Some people it could be 50%, but we'll just tell them straight up because we have all the data. We know pretty much what's going to happen from data, having seen, and we've done over 500,000 visits in this clinic. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's why I'm tired.
Well, I remember I was so impressed. Do you mind me asking how old you are now, by any chance?
73.
73. So you were getting close to 70 when I was out there, and watching you go from patient to pulse to needling to overseeing and managing your staff. But your day started long before you even came in. You had a ritual that you do every morning that I would love for you to share, because I mean, practicing as a monk for 10 plus years, you don't just throw that out when you become a master herbalist, master acupuncturist. That's still probably at the root of your key to success and health. So what would be some of the tenets that you practice on a daily basis that you'd recommend to, say, a patient watching this, or even an acupuncturist, herbalist that wants to study with you? What would be some of your core, like 3 to 5 tenets that you do on a daily basis?
Well, I get up at 5:30 and I meditate for a couple hours till 7:30. Then I have your standard breakfast and I go to work. And I don't eat, I only have a tiny bit for lunch. I don't eat very much, never did. And then a dinner, a very light dinner. So I don't eat a lot. And the 2-hour meditation every morning is very good to keep me healthy and vibrant. And these are mantric meditation, deep meditation, where the metabolic rate drops a great deal during the meditation. I was tested at the Sorbonne in 1973, where because I could meditate under laboratory conditions. And that study was published, actually. They compared me to some Zen master in Japan. I never met him. He was pretty good, actually.
They should compare the Zen master to you. I'm sorry.
Well, he was very good. He and I both could drop our metabolic rates about 28% on average during each meditation.
Wow. Can you also increase it as well if you wanted to?
if you wanted to, but that would, why would you do that? Because that's the opposite of rest. Rest is determined by oxygen consumption. And most people's experience of rest, the deepest point of rest that people normally have is deep sleep. And your metabolic rate will drop on average 8% at the deepest point of deep sleep. Well, in these meditations that I did for them under laboratory conditions, my metabolic rate dropped 28%.
Wow.
On average. What really got them excited, that kind of blew their mind, but what got them excited was there'd be many times during the meditation I simply wasn't breathing at all, for 2 or 3 minutes, which in a yogic terminology is called samadhi. And, where there's no thinking and no breathing. And when you come out of that, it's extremely exhilarating. I mean, it's very, very pleasurable. So to go into this kind of state for 2 hours in the morning, yeah, that's why I'm running around, because I'm all charged up with that kind of energy. And I don't talk about it very much. You're the only one that really asks, so I'm giving you the answer. And
it's absolutely fascinating, because I think a lot of acupuncturists, they think about yin and yang states, right? So, and when you look at business, you need the yang to bring the business in the door, right? And a lot of acupuncturists get stuck in just the yin, right? But I love how you're able to stay mindful. And I hate using the word mindful, because I think what you do is beyond mindfulness. I think it's more transformationalism, right? You're able to stay.
Get rid of the mind.
Yeah, it's mindlessness.
Mindlessness.
But it's interesting seeing how you're able to interact with the patient, and I see it being, I've seen you be in a very yang state, but then also seen you take a step back depending on the person and be able to read people, and that's a skill set. Do you think your meditative work allowed you to be able to read people and know when to put the gas pedal on, when to put the brakes on?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
How to handle a patient is 50% of medicine. And very difficult to teach that, because it's intuitive. And any kind of deep meditative process is designed to expand the mind, give you more access to these unconscious levels of the mind, to make them conscious, so that you're using more mental potentiality in whatever you do. And so instead of using 10% of the mind, we would hope that after years of meditation, you're using 50, 60% of the mind. That's extremely helpful in knowing how to handle people. And some people you have to be very, very soft and sweet with, and others you have to be very firm with. And that's an intuitive thing. You can't teach that. You can't write a book about that. So handling the patient is half the issue. And I think any doctor will tell you the same thing. Any doctor practicing frontline medicine knows full well that handling the patient is a extreme large portion of the delivery of the successful delivery of medicine. And so yeah, I do that. It's just a habit. I do it every day, and I have for 53 years now.
Wow.
A long time.
So with your background in meditation, do you think that helped you with, because you have a very unique pulse system, and it's the emperor, the heart is at the center of your pulse system. And do you think that your experience with meditation brought you to that conclusion of, there's something more important around the heart, and that we're not accessing it in Chinese herbalism right now? And it expanded your consciousness of, I think that this is a missing piece. Because I remember when I was studying with you, everything came back to the heart. And I don't know if you changed your viewpoint at all, but please share about that.
Well, Chinese medicine is really a cardiovascular medicine. It was maligned tremendously by the French in the early 20th century by mistranslating basic concepts. The word qi somehow got translated by the French as energy. And even though no one in the world had ever translated the word qi as energy prior to Sully de Meuron, who was an intellectual a French intellectual that had lived in China for about 17 years. He was a banker, and he had written books on Chinese culture, music. He was a brilliant man, but he made a tremendous translation error by translating qi as energy. There was no philologist in the world before that, or even since then, has ever translated qi as energy. Qi doesn't mean energy. Qi translates, there's about 12 different meanings depending on context. Chinese is a contextual language. But in a medical sense, qi is usually indicative of vital air, the essence of air. And the closest thing in our Western world to be associated with vital air is oxygen, because the Chinese made it very clear that qi is in the vessel, in the mai. Mai means vessel. So Li de Morand translated the word mai as a meridian. So now the West, their first sort of introduction of Chinese medicine was through the eyes of Li de Morand. And his claim was that the Chinese description of the human body is the body is covered with all kinds of energy meridians, of which there's energy, qi, flowing through these magic meridians. And he also had blood flowing through the meridians, but he never quite explained how does physical blood flow through a psychic meridian. So they had to go through all kinds of intellectual cartwheels. So then they had to have it, okay, now there's energy meridians for the qi and there's blood vessels for the blood. But it's very clear from the original text that blood and qi are flowing together in the mai, in the vessel. And the correct translation of the word mai is vessel, in fact, blood vessel. So the real description of Chinese medicine is that the body is covered with literally thousands and thousands and thousands of blood vessels. And what's flowing through the blood vessel is very clear from the text: zhuai, blood; qi, rarefied air; and yin qi, nutrient extracted from food. And those nutrients, those three nutrients, oxygen, qi, blood, zhuai, blood cells, and nutrient from food, are being transferred throughout the body through a gigantic vascular network. And then what health really is highly oxygenated, highly nutritious blood coursing through the human body, where the pump is nice and strong and the mai, or vessels, are wide open. And if that's the case, that person will live a very long time. That is Chinese medicine. So when you're practicing Chinese medicine, the emperor organ, according to the Chinese, is of course the heart. And the next most important thing is how open are the mai, the vessels. So real Chinese medicine is seeing clearly where the mai is obstructed, and if there's a problem with the pumping action of the heart, and trying to fix it with acupuncture and Chinese herbs. And if you want to affect a major change in someone's health, and there's a problem in the cardiovascular system, then you have to go after it. And it works very well. There's a lack of double-blind studies in Chinese medicine, quite frankly, because who's going to spend $200 or $300 million proving that an herb works? But we have a mountain range of anecdotal evidence. And even in Western medicine, anecdotal evidence cannot be ignored, especially when you have 2,000 years of it. Yes. Most off-label use, which is about 30 to 40% of all pharmaceuticals in the United States, are given off-label, meaning the drug is prescribed for a reason for which the FDA did not approve. But medical doctors can do that if they feel like it. But why would they do that? Based on anecdotal evidence. They go to seminars all the time, and then they discover that gabapentin can be used, or a Neurontin can be used for pain. But it's an epileptic seizure drug. So then they go home and give it out for pain. And they find that the patient feels better. And then they tell their buddies. And pretty soon, within 2 years, 90% of the use of gabapentin is for pain relief, even though it's an epileptic seizure drug. This is true for many, many different drugs, all based on anecdotal evidence. Well, we are like the kings of anecdotal evidence. Nobody has 2,000 years of anecdotal evidence, but we do. And that helps us to figure out how to treat a patient.
I remember being in your clinic, and I remember there's one case coming in, and I didn't realize how powerful Chinese medicine was until I saw this. She had an ulcer, and it was in her sacrum. and it was all the way down to the bone. And she had it for a period of time, maybe 1 or 2 years. And she went the traditional route of Western medicine, allopathic medicine. And then she started working with you guys. And you created formulas for her. And I think Muzhuang was one of the formulas you gave her. And you, after a period of time, I think I saw her like 90 days in, and her ulcer was almost completely closed. You know, and it was, for me, I was just like, how'd that even happen? And then you explained it to me. Listen, we're using frankincense and myrrh to really close up the wound internally, and also you put it on topically, I believe you did. You know, so it's fascinating to me to see what's possible.
There's some great Chinese herbalists, you know, around the world. And the only problem is that this moniker of energy, the energy model of Chinese medicine, has done tremendous damage, I think, to the acceptance of Chinese medicine. If it had been described what it really is, a cardiovascular medicine, I think it would have been accepted much easier around the world as a very efficacious medical modality to use. But this energy model has harmed us tremendously, because we could never enter into the field of evidence-based medicine based on a description of what we're doing is improving the energy in your body. So if we continue down this road, we'll be like the weird uncle that no one wants to talk about at Christmas. Well, there's that weird uncle. And so if somebody gets really in bad shape, well, go see the weird uncle, but we don't want to know if you got better, because we sort of like to think of him as really weird, and, you know, there he is, and you can go see what he's going to do for you.
And with your DNA acupuncture, distal needle acupuncture, tell people what that is, and how you devise that. I know we're short on time now. Tell us about that.
Well, when you study acupuncture in college, whether it's in China or here, you're studying this TCM acupuncture, which is really a modern method. It was developed under Mao Zedong, and it's basically composed mostly of, if you have pain in your shoulder, then there's some needles that go in your shoulder, and there's some needles that are chosen at a distance based on certain theory. The problem is it doesn't work very well. It really doesn't work very well. It's not that it doesn't work, but not enough. We're in a profession that you have to produce a dramatic effect on a patient very quickly. Otherwise, no one wants to see the weird uncle anymore. The doctor gets to screw with you for 4 or 5, 6 years and not produce much of a benefit, but you keep going, because we are indoctrinated into a belief system that Western medicine is daddy, and if we're sick, we run to daddy. But Chinese medicine, you have to produce a tremendous result. And the problem with that, what I call the poke and pray method, you know, stick the needle in and then you pray that please get better. That method's only about 50% successful. So naturally, when I started to practice, I knew I had to come up with something better. And over the years, there were luminaries in the field of other methods. Richard Tan came up with the balance method, which he based on Chao Chen's method from Taiwan. So there were other techniques which were, I would label them distal methods, where the needles are placed at a distance from the problem, not directly into the problem. I found those techniques to be much better and to produce in 80, and when you become proficient at them, I would say a 90% result. It's just that over the years, once you've done as many, you know, hundreds of thousands of visits, these distal methods became unique to us. We changed them, we altered them, we made them, we think, better, strictly through practice. And so eventually, after about 10 years of practicing someone else's distal method, that method got morphed to such an extent it became my method. And we call that method distal needling acupuncture, or DNA. And one of the main reasons why we have our own method is because these other distal methods, whether they're Master Deng's method from Taiwan, or Richard Tan's method, he's also from Taiwan, they're all based on the energy model of the body, that you're balancing the energy in the body. And Master Deng, I don't think he even would comment what the reason why the patient was getting better, but of course it was energy. And I am very much opposed to that, because of course it's not true. That's not what the text says. And so DNA has its explanation in the neurology of the body and how the body's neural system functions, what happens when a needle goes in, and how pain relief is affected through the distal needle. So we're using Western neurological explanations with a distal method. And the distal method also is uniquely mine because we just think it's better. And we don't want to cast aspersions to other methods. I mean, if it wasn't for Master Dung and Richard Tan, none of us would be practicing this because it's very hard to figure this stuff out unless someone helps you. So we want to give all the credit to people who came before us, but naturally, over time, you naturally improve upon something. You would hope that you would improve upon something doing it over and over again. So DNA, we think, is the natural, it's the bloom, it's the lotus flower that's come out of these other methods.
And I would vouch for that. I mean, I get 80, 90%, probably around 90%, 92% success rate now, just based on being with you and studying your methods. Now, if an acupuncturist wants to learn from you or herbalist wants to learn from you, where should they go? What would be the best website for them to gain access to you?
Well, we have two websites. We have the acupuncturewellness.net, which is the clinic website, and then we have Doane.us, Doane, D-O, my name, Doane.us, which is a teaching website for Chinese practitioners, which we're in our 37th country now teaching these methods.
Wow.
And that teaching website has been in existence for over 10 years. There's literally thousands of teaching hours, how to treat anything with our methods on Doane.us. So if someone really wants to learn our method, they should become a member of Doane.us. It's not very expensive. And you will get a plethora of knowledge and instruction about how to treat anything. We do weekly blogs.
I was about to mention that. Yep.
Yep. And there's 10 years of weekly blogs. There's I teach worldwide in usually about 6-7 countries a year, and all those webinars webinars are on the teaching website because we film it. So all that's there with all the questions. And in Europe, a lot of the people who practice Chinese medicine are medical doctors. So these courses are on a very high level for the people in the medical field. And then if someone wants to actually train here specifically, we have an intern training program. All they have to do is call the office or email us from acupuncturewellness.net or Doane.us. They email us, we'd like to be an intern, and people can come and spend anywhere from 2 or 3 days to, we've had people in here for 3 months. Yeah, we've had medical doctors come in from Europe, spend 2 or 3 months here to get completely established in Chinese medicine before they go back and add Chinese medicine to their Western practice.
And if patients want to get in contact with you as well, can you do distal treatments for people for recommending herbs? So if somebody's watching this, that's watching it in the East Coast, and they want to contact you for herbs, is that something they could do? And if somebody's local to your demographics, how do they get in contact with you for all that?
Yeah, we're right now during COVID, we're seeing about 60, 70 people a day, but half of them are on the telephone. And we're sending herbs all over the world. And we have patients in Taiwan, Hong Kong, New Zealand, Australia, all over Europe, Africa, South America. So we're talking to people all over the world, and we're shipping herbs. We're shipping 40, 50 packages a day out here. So if somebody wants to engage our services herbally, we'll do that over the phone with them.
Perfect.
Easily done.
That's great. You know, Bob, I really appreciate your time. You look younger than you did 4 or 5 years ago when we met in Germany. Keep on being a beacon of hope for acupuncturists and herbalists throughout the world. And I'm so proud to be a friend of yours. And thank you so much for your time.
You're very kind. Thank you very much. And good luck to you.
God bless.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.